All right, welcome everyone. I am your host tonight, Jack H, and I'm coming to you live from the North American headquarters of the Cheese Room on the day after the Super Bowl here in America. Um, Tonight, we're going to review the last minute exciting win we had against Brighton at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And with me, I've got two fantastic guests. And we all have a little bit in common, which is a little bit kind of unusual, I think, other than the fact that we're all Spurs fans. First, um, I have HG from Vienna. How you doing, HG?
I'm good. I thought we were going to talk about the last minute of the Super Bowl for a second. The way you
Ah,
were introducing like Super Bowl, and I was like, "Oh, don't ask me about that." No, I'm good. I'm good. I was pretty tired because I did stay up to watch the Super Bowl, but after a day at work and a bit of a nap, I am ready to go again.
excellent. Isiah, who didn't get a nap, but probably hasn't been up too long in America, sitting back home at my house. My son, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. So here's the thing. What's unusual, I don't know how often this happens, everyone, but your three panelists tonight, even though the Cheese Room is a global empire, we have all actually been in the same room together at the same time. That doesn't happen that much on this show. Even though we are on different continents, we've actually, when I was vacationing this summer with the family, we came through Vienna and spent some time with HG, so that was great. We also have two of the three panelists here who can speak German, and I am not one of them. So that's also another thing. And we all obviously have an American connection because obviously I'm American. Isaiah's obviously American. And HG, your better half, American.
She's American. My daughter's half American, although we don't talk about that.
No.
And no, I mean, she sounds a bit more American. Sadly, she has a go at me when I say "we" instead of "p." But, I know it's cute. It's cute. But yeah, no, you're right. America, it's not that bad. It's not as bad as people say. Some of
It
it.
depends.
Maybe.
We won't get into that. Otherwise, I'll have Isaiah go off a rant. And we're here to talk about Spurs. So anyway, and thanks to our esteemed producer, I think we have some slides that we're going to be able to have tonight. But let me do a little housekeeping first, and we'll start with the slides. First of all, thanks for joining us, everyone. Don't forget, we have a great Patreon group. You can see the address up here, and now that we are a global group, you have a Slack chat that goes 24/7 about Spurs. We've got prizes and discounts. We've got a great prediction league that has a prize. We've got ticket shares. We've got all sorts of things. So I want you for £3 a month or whatever that translates to your local currency. You should join the group. It's great. And also, I want to mention we do have an interesting prize. Football Prizes is a partner of ours. There is a Brennan Johnson signed shirt that evidently is going to be gifted on the 20th of February. And there are other charts up there. It's signed. It looks like a Basuma, Richarlison. Lots of gifts at football prizes. Those tickets are $3.95, and for patrons of the Cheese Room, you get a discount. So please sign up and join the fun. All right. So we are not going to talk about the Super Bowl because I could not care less. And I know HG, you probably care more than the two of us here since you actually watched it. So, but I'm glad you did that. But I'm not going to go into that detail. We are going to talk about Spurs. And I think as a game recap, we always like to start with our lineup. So here's what we set up with to face Brighton. I don't think there are a lot of surprises. HG, this lineup, do you think this is what you were hoping for or what you were expecting or both from Ange?
No, I think I was hoping that Son would start. Like, I know he's played a lot of games in the Asian Cup, and I know that he's travelled and all the rest of it, but it's a difficult game, right? You know, Brighton beat us a few weeks ago. I kind of wanted the best available team, and I do think Son is in that, even if he is, knackered from travelling. But otherwise, yeah, that 11 basically picks itself as far as I'm concerned right now.
Isaiah, the midfield. I mean, I think that's where no one has any question about who our back five starters are. That goes without saying. Unless someone's injured, no one's coming out of that. In terms of the midfield, with Sarr, Benaker, and Madison, is that your preferred best 11 midfield type of setup, or would you think you'd like to see something different or anything else in this lineup?
The reason that I had previously thought that Bentancur was maybe ill-suited to a traditional six in this type of midfield where Sarr and Madison are going to get so advanced. Well, Sarr's going to get so far wide and out of the midfield, and Madison's going to get a lot of times very advanced. And you need somebody who has both really, really good ball retention and great defensive abilities. And so, Bentancur, I never questioned his ball retention abilities, his press resistance, but I was like a little concerned on the defensive end. Not that he's a bad defender, but just that that's not what he's done most of his career, is be that sort of shield. And in the last couple of games, he has been excellent defensively. His tackles have been great. He's been in great positions defensively. He's covered the fullbacks and the center backs really well, and his ball retention hasn't been great. And so it's kind of like, and we were going through, I feel like, a similar thing with Bissouma, where on any given day he might be brilliant going forward and keeping the ball, but he's lacking his defensive duties, or is turning the ball over in difficult areas, or he plays really well defensively, but he's just got nothing when the ball hits his feet. And so it since that Luton game, so it sort of feels like I'm not sure which one of them fits that sixth position as the starter, or if either of them are like fully rounded right now in their current form, rounded enough to play that six that can become a little isolated.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think anyone questions whether, when fit, Maddison and Sarr are on the starting line, in the starting lineup automatically. It's really that third midfield spot. HG, we've talked a lot about this. What are your feelings right now in terms of who gets that role? Is it opponent dictated? Is it circumstantial? What are your thoughts on the third midfield slot?
Yeah, I'm not even sure if it can be opponent dictated, because I think most opponents have figured out a way to actually make life difficult for us, which is what we struggle with. It's not that our players aren't good on the ball; they are. But if you can disrupt that, then we do seem to struggle. I think it's interesting that Sarr is now suddenly, like, everyone has realised how important he is to what Spurs are trying to do. Whether it's out wide, like Isiah said, because the first half he spent a lot of it almost in the right back position, whereas in the second half I thought he played more central and we got a bit more dominance in midfield because of it. So I don't feel like as if there's a best for an opponent. I think it's just nice knowing that no matter which three we have, whether it's Bissouma coming in or Bentancur or even someone coming in for Sarr, like I don't think the quality or the strength of the team dips that much. So it's not really like we saw before with Poch, like we had a first 11 and not much else. Here it feels like we've got maybe a first 15 before it starts to drop a little bit in quality, and that's obviously a good thing. So I have a feeling Bissouma will probably start the next game, but I don't think that's because Bentancur played badly. I think it's just because Ange sees an opportunity to maybe use some fresher legs and freshen things up a bit.
Yeah, I think for me that first half, we're going to get into the first half and go through it in some detail. Watching it, and I think it was pretty clear that we are having trouble in a lot of areas building out. Obviously, we've been having trouble building out a lot recently. And one of the things I was looking at these last two games and earlier in the season is that there seemed to be fewer options. I think that's what you're saying, is that early on teams he didn't know how to set up against us. Now they're starting to figure out how to set up. So they're limiting the passing options to build out. And when that happens, I really feel like an informed Bissouma is our best option, because I really think he's the quickest and most dynamic on the ball, and you can feed him in tight spots. There was a moment we'll talk about later, but where we're rolling Benny the ball with somebody right in his shorts, and I think you can get away with that with Bissouma much more than you can almost anyone else. But I think that I think if he's at his best, I really think he's our best six. I just don't know if we need to bring someone in to back him up, or that is a position he shares with Bentancur. It'll be interesting how Ange plays them if they both stay fit the rest of the season. But that first half, I mean, when I watched it, it seemed like the team didn't really adjust to the fact that Brighton was going to press us everywhere, all over the field. They were late to getting to the second ball. They were taking way too much time on the ball. There was a ton of loose passes. I counted Richarlison, who ended up having a pretty decent game. His first 5 passes weren't just off; they were off by miles. I mean, and it wasn't just him. So that first half really didn't play well. And then to show you that the eye test and the stats don't always match up, I went back and looked at the first half stats. We had 47% possession, which is less than we usually do. 7 shots to 4. 3 of theirs were on target. 2 of ours were, of course. There's a penalty in there we'll talk about. We missed 2 big chances. They did 1. We had 109 passes in their half versus 45 for them in our half, which is not the way it felt. I guess it's the chances we gave up that was the main thing. So, overall, HE, what did you feel about the first half and what was not working, what was not going right for Spurs?
Well, I think the first minute started it, didn't it? The fact that we had the ball, Van der Ven gets caught, not necessarily a mistake per se, but he gets caught on the ball. Welbeck goes through and has a pretty good shot and a pretty good save. That was within the first minute, I think. And from then, it was just it affects the crowd too. The crowd is suddenly no, Spurs, get into it. And rather than that being a positive reinforcement, it's more like, oh no, I've paid my money to watch us win. What's going on here? And Brighton are very good at what they do. And so I don't feel like they created a huge amount, and what they did create was from our mistakes. And I think the same is true probably in the other direction, that we didn't create too much, but we pushed them into mistakes, and whatever mistakes they made, we got into decent areas and got some, I think, quite good chances, but we just didn't test the keeper enough. So whereas we sit here and say, Mitoma had a good shot and Welbeck had a good shot, and Vicario made 2 very good saves before the goal, we didn't really test Steele too much. Richarlison was through, but it kind of kicked it at the keeper.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Doing too much, and so it's just. I think that a lot of Spurs fans probably at halftime were just feeling a bit down, and that we're not beating this team that we feel that we should. We've got all our best players back, but whereas when you looked at it, it was a relatively even game. But they took one of their chances, they punished one of our mistakes, and we didn't, and that really was the difference at halftime.
Yeah, I was wondering. I had actually a note to ask you guys. Because Mickey, had that gap at midfield early in the game and then falls. And that my question was, does that mean he's actually human? Because I don't know that he'd made a mistake other than some bad bounces that, were deflections and stuff, which you can't really blame a defender. But it was the first actual almost mistake I've ever seen him make. Yeah, so you're right. That error led to the Welbeck testing Vicario, which was a great save. Benny lost possession that leads to the penalty. And here's some clips. So Isiah, what's your feeling? Is this a foul and a deserved penalty?
Well, the first and second images here aren't great, and I think focus on the third one, because the best video I've seen so far is kind of from Mickey's right. Mm-hmm. And when the contact actually happens, Welbeck comes down on Van de Ven's foot, not the other way around. Van de Ven puts in the challenge. I don't know the exact rules on that, but for me, Welbeck's kind of stepped on his foot and he's realized there was contact and the ball's gone, so he's going to go down. And it didn't feel like it didn't feel like they spent hardly any time looking at it. You see so many of these penalty decisions that weren't given on the field, scrutinized and shown, slow-mo angles and zoomed in and still images every way they possibly can to try to figure out that it is a penalty. And then when they have one awarded on the pitch that, might need a closer look, they're like, go ahead. There's just not consistency in the way that they're examining these decisions, which is why there's not consistency in the decisions. I'm not saying that it's definitely not a penalty. I don't think it is, but it just didn't get the kind of scrutiny that you would expect of something that is borderline.
And you've done I think you've put together in our group chat, you put together some information on Spurs in terms of the penalties awarded and that sort of stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit, because we're going to talk about the second half penalty shout for Kulusevski. So don't forget, I want to bring that up for discussion a little bit later. So for you, HG, is this a clear-cut pen and you saw it live and on the replay, or you think it's a little soft, as many of ours have been this season?
Yeah, clear cut, no. The referee was in a really good position and he gave it straight away. And there is all this kind of when you watch him, he does think about it, right? There is this kind of there is contact. What's really happening? How does it really go? It just, unfortunately, it's Spurs. They're under pressure, and when you're under pressure, you make mistakes. And maybe Van der Ven, it isn't a massive mistake. But, again, anywhere else on the pitch, it's a foul, no one cares. But there, it obviously matters a huge amount more. And that's why a lot of fans, they don't like seeing teams play out from the back, because they recognize that any any half mistake in that area can really hurt you. And so, look, like we've had a few penalties go against us that I would say were of contact of that level, where there really wasn't much in it, but like almost the benefit of the doubt goes to the striker, which is frustrating because some of them really weren't penalties. But I wasn't crying at the time. It just felt like, okay, like Spurs, we'd had a pretty poor first 10, 15 minutes. This was kind of where it was heading anyway. And so we almost only had ourselves to blame.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw it, I've seen that sort of thing given most of the time, and I wasn't too upset about it. It was early enough not to get too exercised about it, so I didn't feel, that it was we've been robbed or something like that. So I thought it was a decent shot for a penalty. Although I do agree that it was definitely iffy. If you look at it, roll it back, and it didn't receive a lot of scrutiny, and it doesn't need to. But that got us down 1-0, obviously, early on. I think that's the 17th, 18th minute. Not long afterwards, we get I think this is probably our best chance. This is Richarlison going in after fed by Maddison, and he's one-on-one with Steele. And he kind of opens up his body, his hips, and tries to pick out the far post and basically just hits it right at Steele. And so to your point, we weren't really testing him. We had a lot of chances, but weren't forcing him into some great saves.
Yeah, like I don't feel as if like Richarlison's in that position. I'm thinking probably there's a 20% chance he's going to score. Like, I don't mean that nastily, but it's his weaker side. So, like, what is he going to have to do to get around the keeper? Keeper just makes himself big, and Richarlison has to find a bottom corner, either with his left or right foot, or take it round the keeper, which, again, I don't really trust him to do. So, yeah, like, it's a chance, and it's a good chance, but I don't think I ever really thought he was going to score it. And that's maybe rough on Richarlison, but it's... I guess, we've all been spoiled by having Kane go through, and you kind of expect him to hit it with his weaker left side and still find the corner. And Richarlison doesn't really have the confidence to even attempt it. So, yeah, hindsight is obviously talking, but it's still it's a good chance. And it was a really good pass from Maddison, who was kind of stumbling as he kicked it, and Richarlison had made the run. And it is a good chance. It's just. Yeah, like I almost want to see that on the other side of the area where he's running through and it's on his right foot and he can, he's going to blast it. Like there's no doubt he's going to hit it on the strong side, and he doesn't need to run around it and hope to maybe do something a bit more creative. But it was a good chance. I mean, like Spurs, I think did well to create it almost out of nothing. But,
Isiah, we talked about this. Is this one of those where trying to open up and pick out that far corner is not the best option, but rather fake that and drag it past to go around Steele on his right? We talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few options here. Not that I'm a technical expert when it comes to finishing, but just kind of thinking about what would Harry do. He would come in and he would start opening his body up, like you said, on that, like he was going to go to far post. The goalkeeper starts cheating, then he chops it back. Or if the goalkeeper cheats enough, he starts moving down, and you can either chip over him or just play into that near post. So you can either try to delay until the goalkeeper slides and chip it over him, which strikers often like to avoid doing if they can, because it risks the defender being fast enough to get back to the goal line before the ball gets there. But the thing about all of those options, chipping it over him, trying to dribble around him, or trying to hit it into the near post on sort of like a fake drag back shot like Harry used to do, they're all better options than kicking him in the face with it.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yep.
Like to put it bluntly, like I think if most of us tried to run around the ball, open things up, and find the far corner, we would hit the keeper. Like we would get it
100%.
Right. And so, and I don't want to damn Richarlison by saying he's like the rest of us. It's a difficult skill to do, right? To actually get enough curve on the ball where it does go into the far. Like I feel like we see Martinelli do this a lot, and he's able to find the far corner. Right, he gets around the ball, he cuts in from the left-hand side, and he can find either post. But usually he goes for that far corner, and I just don't think Richarlison has that finish yet. Hopefully he can work on it. But I think if I'm watching him in this situation, I think his best bet is to hit it low and hard with his left and hope it goes through the keeper's legs or something like that. Because I think that even the goal he scored against Newcastle, I think, where the Porro lifted it over the top and he miscontrolled it, but then suddenly found it on his left foot and he connected decently, but it went through the keeper's legs because the keeper goes to spread himself, and it's part luck, part, I don't think he really planned to do that. But I just feel that in those situations, it's about finding the best possible shot, and none of them probably have a percentage of more than maybe 30%.
Well, I agree with that. And I think we can also all agree that, as Ms. says, this was very unfortunate because whatever Richarlison did was nowhere near as bad as now. Werner had maybe his best game for us so far, which is not a big, sample size, of course. But I mean, I just don't know what, this is a great job by John. Thank you, John, for this slide. I mean, first of all, you got 3 people that you're going to have to beat from this spot. And he takes it with all that space in front of him. He decides to take it one time. And this is the type of thing that frustrates me with Werner and other players in particular, but makes me worry. And also, I think, like you, HE, unlikely I don't care if it's 15 million euro or whatever. Is he really likely to get signed permanently if this is the sort of decision making that he's going to give you in these situations? Because there's tons of space, but there's no help. So I just don't know. What are your thoughts, HE, when this happened, and now that you get a little refresher as to what was going on?
I mean, you look at that picture, like taking it first time, when considering there's a goalkeeper on his feet and alert and 2 defenders in the way, like you're going to have to hit it really well to have a chance, right? You can't side.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, yep.
Right. Like so that's his first mistake, is to take it first time and then try and side foot it. It's probably best to maybe take another touch and hope that other players can get in shot, because as you see there, Richarlison's the only Spurs shirt in the shot and he's offside. So if you take a touch, then obviously maybe the chance will go begging, but you never know. You're playing the odds, right? Like I think probably Werner decided the best chance of scoring was to hit it first time. Yet the execution of that was extremely poor. I mean, again, like you want someone, like you are not going to side foot it from there into the bottom corner. You're not going to stick it between Lamptey and I think it's probably Lewis Dunk and find the corner. The most chance you have of scoring is to hit it hard and probably low and probably at the keeper or towards the keeper, because it's the closest distance, if nothing else. But again, this is all hindsight. Like, again, I'm not a footballer. I don't know, but I think I'm not alone in watching that thinking, oh no. Right? There was probably a better option there. And like to me, and I think I've said this plenty of times, like the difference between the good and the very good, or the very good and the elite, is the decision making. It's not skill, right? Because if skill was what mattered, all those people that stand in European squares doing skills with the ball on the top of their feet while they're laying on the ground, they'd all be Premier League footballers. It's not about skill. It's about using your brain and making good choices. And even though this was Werner's best performance for Spurs, I think that too. I just don't think the decision making is good enough, and that's a massive problem.
I say so. If Son had gotten the start and this ball falls to him, what do you think his decision making is going to lead to right here?
Well, kind of what I had thought a little bit about the Richarlison shot, and I chose to sort of make fun of him instead of make this point. It's sort of the same here. I feel like if you have in both of these situations better footballers, like people with and I know HG was talking about the difference between decision making and skill, but I mean, if these two were more skilled footballers, because, well, obviously, look, if it's Ronaldinho, he's going to take it first time, side of the foot, and it's going to be 15 feet over the bar until it drops into the net. And that's one thing. But if there are players who have competent use of their non-dominant foot, which, in my opinion, every professional footballer should, If you're
But they
training
don't.
that much, you should have competent. I'm not saying you have to be brilliant, but I mean, if I could get my two legs pretty close together, I didn't spend nearly as much time as they did. Now, my right foot's not nearly as good as theirs, but I just feel like they're lower quality players in terms of skill, and higher quality players like Son would have had more options here, because Son could take it down on his right foot to his left. And then he has the option of using his left. He has the option of avoiding Van Hecke's challenge, making Lamptey move over and using his left foot. And all of that time lets Richarlison move back over into another position. Maybe he gets in the ball, or maybe Sonny just takes one touch and shoots at that top near post with his left foot, because he can use either foot. And that's not because he was born that way. It's because he trained until he could. And players of that ability in this situation have more options, because Sonny can hit that shot on his right foot first time, or he can take a quick enough touch that he can get a right-footed shot off before Van Hecke comes in, or he can chop it to his left foot and hit that top corner. He has options for making that a goal, and a player of Timo Werner's quality doesn't.
And that's why we can't blame Werner for taking it first time. Like, I don't think the ball was rolling on the ground. I think it was still bobbling a little bit. Like, it's not a difficult thing. I mean, sorry, it's not an easy thing to hit. However, when you know what your strengths are. Like, I mean, Isiah's right. Son has options. Werner doesn't really. So, like, if I'm Timo Werner and I recognize what I'm good at, like, okay, I'm going to use my strong foot, which is my right foot, and then it's a question of, do I want to go for power or for placement? Right, he chose placement, and we saw, the execution of that choice wasn't good. Right, so I feel like when I used to watch Jermaine Defoe, and he'd be through one-on-one, you saw that same option: do I go for power, or do I place it? And almost always, in my memory, which is probably why it's wrong, but like my memory says, he rarely chose the right option. If he was close to the keeper, he would try and place it. And if he was far out, he would try and blast it, when actually you're probably better off the other way around, right? If you're close to the keeper, just hit it hard, and like, he can't react to it then, right? Like, you've just got to avoid him. But whereas you're further out, okay, yeah, you can hit it hard, and you might get lucky and it go in the corner, but the keeper's got time to react if it's not in the corner. And that placement maybe will be the best choice. So here, like, I don't blame Werner for taking it on first time, but I think the fact that it just wasn't a good effort kind of shows that, like, that's what we should expect from him. Like, he might find it 1 in every 25. He might find the corner from there, but I think that would be very, very fortunate if he was to do that. So again, like, it's not that Werner is a bad player. I don't think he is. I just don't think that in that situation he's the kind of person you want going for it, because I don't think Sonny would have hit it first time. I don't think Kane would have hit it first time, and I think a lot of that is because they know they are better on the ball than Werner does, and Werner knows what his strengths are.
Yeah. I was like, if you're gonna hit it one time, and I just was frustrating was it wasn't even close to on target. Just hit one of the three, keep it in play. You never know, but anyway, okay. So what we moving on. So this is
It's Kulusevski.
Yeah. So this is the effort. This is Rishi playing Kulu in, and there was some good contact, and I think Kulu gets penalized for staying on his feet and trying the old Harry at Leicester, falling down and kicking it into the roof of the net or whatever it was, and he actually makes a really good effort, but there's a lot of contact, and I would say just as much as there was with Welbeck earlier in the match. You have looked at some of the stats, I think, on touches in the box and penalties awarded and penalties given. I don't have them in front of me. You might have them available to you.
Yeah, well, I did till just a second ago. Hold on, and back. Yeah, so I've been kind of following this all season, but I kind of dove in a little bit deeper on the stats. So I had been kind of tracking the rates of teams' touches in the opponent penalty areas to penalties. And just because the team who has either been first or second in that stat all season long has also been last in penalties awarded all season long, and that's Spurs. We have the joint fewest with sides in the relegation zone. Meanwhile, every other side in the Big Six and every other high possession side has over 5 awarded. Well, no, except for Manchester United, but they're not a high possession side this season. And Chelsea has 8. Arsenal, Liverpool have 7. Spurs have 1, and it was awarded when we were already 3-0 up late in the game. Or 2-0 up, something like that. And we have the average fouls committed. We're 12th in the league in that table. So fouls per game, we're 12th in the league. But total cards awarded against us were 5th. And then Reds were joint 2nd. While having a very actually below average number of fouls per game, we're receiving more cards than any other team. So we're more likely to receive a yellow or a red for any given challenge, statistically speaking. Less likely to receive a penalty per 100 touches in the penalty area than any other team in the Premier League for the last 5 seasons, because data doesn't go back any further than that. And we're joint 1st in penalties conceded, even though we're the 3rd highest possession team behind Brighton and City in the league, or maybe it's 4th behind Arsenal, Brighton, and City. I can't remember. But we have the joint most penalties conceded with relegation sides and Fulham, which is 6. And you might think like bad luck, but the problem with attributing it to luck is that there's a reason the bad teams are always near the bottom of the ref stats. They're not on the ball. They make more mistakes because their players are worse. They're defending in their penalty areas more than other teams are because they're worse. And so they're more likely to have to make a challenge in the penalty area, more likely to give away a penalty. They're less likely to have the ball in the other team's penalty area to win a penalty. That's why those stats are bad for them, because they're bad players on bad teams relative to this league, obviously, because they're all amazing. But for me, what it feels like is since the Liverpool game, it's just been brutal. Since they made that mistake, it's just been so bad. And I don't know if and look, I've complained about refs in every sport I've ever watched for my entire life. But it's statistically, like, I've never had these kind of stats to complain about. Like, I've never had that before. And when the stats look like that, and I'm not leaving stats out, like, that's all of the ref stats. I have them all. And they're all skewed in the way against us in the way that they're not for other teams. I have everyone's stats on this. It's just
so HD. Do you think we should put tinfoil hats on and declare us as a cheese room conspiracy theorists, or do you think there's anything to this type of analysis that we lead the league in touches in the box, but we can't get any penalties called?
Touches in the box doesn't necessarily lead to a penalty.
Oh, sorry. I have one more stat that actually addresses that. We also have, by a lot, the joint most. It's either, well, we're definitely 1st, but we have the most carries into the penalty area. So players dribbling into the penalty area of any other team in the league. There's that stat too. Sorry.
Okay. No, I mean, these stats all sound good. I just don't think it really leads to an idea that, like, okay, we if we bring the ball into the box, but if there's no challenge, then there's no penalty. And if we touch the ball in the box, if there's no challenge, there's no penalty. Like, those are great stats, and they show a lot about how Spurs play, but it doesn't really mean, like, I want to look at individual challenges and look at, hey, like, for every 10 50-50 challenges in the box, Spurs get 2 and United get 8. Then I think there's something in that, right? When there's really nothing in it apart from it's the referee's call, and the referee's giving 8 to Man United and only 2 to Spurs, then I would start to think maybe there was maybe not like an obvious bias, but you'd be thinking, okay, like, if our Spurs at home, do we get them? If United are at home, why do they get them? Then I think there's something to look at. But just basing it on touches and carries, that's not enough, because Spurs rarely over. Like, I mean, the penalty that Brighton got was because they had 4 or 5 around the ball, and they were playing it fast, and it was a challenge from a Spurs player. The Brighton player goes down. Spurs don't do that. We don't flood the box in numbers in that area. We don't try. Like, we might have 1 or 2 around certain players to win it, but then it's like, if we win it 35 yards from goal, it's a quick pass to someone else who then gets the shot. We don't harry on the edge of the box. Maybe we did at the start of the season when Ange ball was much more obvious, but we don't really seem to do that anymore. We're more of a, a kind of a pressing team in what you say Klopp was, where it's man to man. You make it difficult for the team to pass out, but you don't flood the defenders. I don't know if that's a choice that we've made as a team, but I feel like the type of Angel we're seeing now is a bit different. So like it's weird that we can obviously think of, I can think of penalties that have gone against us that I think weren't penalties, but I can't think of too many the other way around. And you'd think as a Spurs fan, I'd be really, really good on remembering the ones that went against us. But if I can only remember ones in a defensive area, maybe there just aren't that many in forward areas. Like I don't think this is a penalty, right? Like I think Kulusevski is riding a challenge, but I don't think he's being pushed. I think it's a 50-50. Stupid is just making it difficult for him, but I don't think there's a penalty there. I don't think I wouldn't even look at that as being possibly one. So maybe I have blinkers for certain things, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think historically it's been very correlated with touches in the box and penalties awarded over the last several years. And this year's, you can't say just because we're now up in that stat and we're not getting them. Both of you can be right to some extent. It'll be interesting to continue to watch, but I think that's fair. I mean, this is so let's go to well, I don't want to go here yet. I want to back up a second. So let's move on to Sarr a little bit because we're going to in the second half. So we have I think one of the things that's been pointed out many, many times, and I think you alluded to this earlier, issue, is that finally I think even the casual fans are starting to recognize how important Sarr is to this team and what he does. And in fact, I've said multiple times, I took this from somebody else, that he's salt. He's only missed when he's not there. And you can taste when you're eating something like, something's missing. What is this? I can't figure it out. Well, and so he clearly was having a good game. And I think Isiah, you had me get some slides together. I'm not sure if I think this is the first half. Let me pull this up a second. So here's a sequence that you wanted to be highlighted a little bit. This is bad visuals, I just realized, but you're getting the ball coming up from Varkara. The person who's checking in is Madison here, and he's dragging Van Hecke way out of. Van Hecke comes all the way across midfield to pick up Madison and creates a big hole in behind. And this is something I think what you were saying that you found on Twitter that was somebody was pointing out has just been missing when Sarr's not in the game, right?
Well, the person tweeted this video saying, he's basically Sarr from the position you see him in there, which is the guy just to the right to the referee. He just sort of jogs forward with Richie on the ball as he's turning here, right? He doesn't make a run. Richie looks for him, looks off of that shoulder. When you watch the video, he looks, there's no run. What you can't see in this screenshot, just because that's where the camera was at that moment, is there is no one in between those two Brighton players.
Yeah, it's a huge hole. I mean, you could drive a truck down the center of the pitch right here.
If Sarr makes a run straight through right there,
he's in.
Like he does in the second half for the goal he does score, he's one-on-one. Acres of space, it's him and Steele. But he doesn't. And we weren't getting that from him, and we usually do. That's one of the things we miss when he leaves is those bursting runs or those late runs from deep positions coming into the penalty area. That's one of the biggest things we miss, as well as how well he links the build-up down the right side. I mean,
because if you look at this screen and how much space we've got in the center of the pitch to where it ends up, it comes out to Udogie, who comes out to Werner, and now they've got their shape back. Yeah. So, but contrast that with the goal, which we'll talk about. Let me just get that slide back, which is just a really fantastic setup. Let me get it. Nope, wrong goal. Sorry, everyone. Nope, a little bit forward. Yeah, nope. Here we go.
There you go.
Yeah. So my feeling here is at the time, I think, and when I watched it back, and now I see the slide even more. What Kulu does here, I think you talked about this earlier, HG, decision making. Everyone has great skill there are 22 players on this pitch who have fantastic skill, some of the best in the world. But this is not as easy a pick out, I think, as it was initially, as people might initially assume. Because if you look at the screenshot, you've got obviously Richarlison is offsides. It's debatable here whether Poro is or not. I know he's definitely behind, but depending on when he plays it. But he picks out Sarr with making a fantastic run. I mean, this is an unbelievably good pick out with the space he has and hits Sarr in stride. So I thought this was really, really exceptional from Kulu. I don't know, had a great game, but at least this is a sign of great decision making with execution from both players. HG, what do you remember this setup and how you felt about this goal here.
Like it's interesting. Again, these runs from deep. Like Maddison spends a lot more time getting the ball off the centre backs than I expect him to. Right? Like I think Bentancur does it, but Maddison likes to do it too. And if Porro, like I feel like Porro has not really been on the ball that much in recent games. And so what we saw in the first half was that Porro was going into midfield and Sarr was leaving that area to almost play as a right back and cover for if Porro loses the ball or whatever. But sometimes it's best to actually just go with the runners. We missed something. If there are no runners from deep, then the Brighton backline can just sit there, right? Like there's nothing to worry about.
Right.
Or the back four can watch the Brighton midfield pressure our back six or whatever, and we'll make mistakes. Like we have to give teams more to worry about. Like we saw that the chance when it fell to Werner and only Richarlison's in shot, right? And yet here, the angles. I mean, obviously the angle is slightly different, but if it was to be on the other side of the pitch, you'd see Richarlison, you'd see Werner, you'd see Porro, you'd see a lot of players making those runs to support or to give options to the person playing the ball forward. And so I feel like second half, the reason why we got better, and we did get better, was that we were much more much more attacking in thought and deed. We weren't about trying to get through Brighton. We were kind of like, no, we're going to play it over. And then we're just going to run a bit more. And back, we can't pass through you. We know we're not good enough, but maybe we can outwork you. Maybe we can outnumber you in certain areas and get some joy. And I think that's what you see here. Like that Brighton back five. I mean, because Van Heck is a bit further forward than the rest, but that's a pretty good back four line, right? Richarlison, as you said, is offside. Porro's close to being offside. But again, that runner from deep, like, is that Welbeck that's tracking the run of Sarr? Probably
looks like it.
Yeah, so and you wouldn't expect that to be Welbeck's job. So there's been a lot of movement, and Sarr has got the run on Gilmore and on Welbeck and on those midfield players that would usually be tracking it. Like if he starts the run out wide, then Mitoma will track him. But there's no one on Kulusevski. I mean, maybe it's just poor from Brighton. Now I'm looking at it like, why is Kulusevski got that much space, and why is there that much space behind? But we take advantage of it, and I think a lot of it is to do with Sarr's ability to just make those runs. Again, like I don't necessarily trust him in a one-on-one either, but the fact he's willing to stretch backlines means that Spurs are more difficult to play against.
Yeah. He played it fantastically well. He picks it in stride, goes down, tries to square it to Richie, of course, as we know. And then Dunk, Dunk has to do what he has to do. It's either if it goes to Richie, it's a goal, 9 out of 10 times. But it comes off the post, and the finish from Sarr as he's almost falling out of bounds is actually quite really good. Yeah. And then of course he runs he jumps over the advert board, and ends up picking up a yellow. Isiah, you got any comments on this goal or the caution to Sarr?
Well, a few comments on the goal itself. Kind of like HG was saying, the willingness of Sarr to make those runs is such a big deal to us, because the reason he gets this much space, in my opinion, is Brighton think they've done their job here. Worst case, the ball goes to Porro, who's here on the right, and you try to defend across into Richarlison, and maybe Sarr and Timo get into the box, and you defend across into them, and you can deal with that as Brighton with big center backs. Because Richarlison's offside, they see the striker's offside, they're holding their line, they're happy. It's not till this moment that Decky's right about to play Sarr through that they realize that Sarr is coming from that deep position. So if your striker, I'm not saying Richie's offside intentionally here. He could be. That's possibly a tactic to decoy him, as yes, that's worked. He's the offside striker, and let the midfielder run through. But if he wasn't offside unintentionally, he's gonna be offside by accident a lot of the time. So this type of thing works out when you have a striker like him that's always on that back shoulder. It works against a high line to use a deep run from midfield. And Ange knows that because he coaches a high line himself. And I just think that we weren't getting that in the first half from Sarr, and we were not threatening. We started getting that in the second half from Sarr and immediately started threatening. And that's the difference between this clip that's a goal and the last clip that's not even a chance. So that's yeah. And then the caution, I just think is, I understand. Well, I don't know the exact letter of the law, what you can and can't do, But, players go and they hug fans, and don't get booked. And I understand on our stadium, you actually have to fully clear the ad boards to get to them. And that difference, as HT pointed out in the chat yesterday, the other day. But it just kind of felt like, you see players doing basically that all the time, and there's no booking, and then the Spurs player does it, and then there's the booking, and it was another one of those frustrating things for the tinfoil hat guy. I just think it's silly. Let them be happy that they scored. Let them take their shirts off and high five fans. Let them enjoy it. It's silly to me.
I agree. And I saw Hoyland. I saw a couple other people yesterday and the other games who went over to the boards, didn't get in the stands, but certainly went up to hug fans, and no one got carded. So it's a little frustrating that he picked up that card. This is a comment from MS or Ms. Is this? I didn't remember this because I didn't get a chance to watch it back. This is that one moment that I guess I do now remember, because he comes off after this, right? Yeah. And exactly. It was his best moment of the entire game, at least from an offensive standpoint, where he did beat Threep. And that's probably the reason why Decky is so open, is because Bentancur just shreds the press. And that's probably the reason, actually, because I think that we had the space. So, I agree with this.
It's funny, Bentancur is right. Bentancur does, he gets a bit fortunate in one of the areas, but he manages to evade a couple of challenges and get the ball to Kulusevski. But again, if you're looking at that as a Brighton fan, they're more Brighton players at the back, right? They've got 4 Spurs runners and the ball, right? And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 Brighton players, in somewhat defensive positions now. It's not they shouldn't be that open, but we took advantage of it because that gap between Dunk and Estupiñán is too large, and there aren't players to track those runners. I'm looking at the Spurs players. I don't know. It's either Maddison at the top or it's Werner at the top. But
it's Werner.
It's Werner. So where is Maddison in that shot? Right, that's the thing. One of them is not in that shot. So you start to wonder, if Werner is further up the shot and is kind of the other side of Lamptey, then okay, then we've got an extra number. But it's so far from the ball that you're not expecting it. So as a Brighton fan, I still look at that and think, hey, we've got caught, but the players were there. Bentancur did well to beat the players he did, but it's not as if we were then 3 versus 3, 4 versus 3 because of it. Brighton still had enough numbers. So I think the most frustrating thing about this, and it seems weird to talk about frustration when we score from it, is that we had momentum, right? And those players that we've talked about, Kulusevski and Bentancur, this was the best moment of the game for them. Yep. And they both went off. And that just struck me as being they're playing well now. Why would you take that away from them? Things are going their way. We are winning the battles. We are being stronger in the areas. We've got more of the ball and we're using it in attacking areas. That was the frustrating bit. Because again, I'm all happy at 1-1. I understand the fresh leg logic, but there were maybe other options that could have gone off. And
that was going to be my next point.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. I'm glad you segued like we almost rehearsed this show. So. So we get a triple sub, and obviously Werner, Kulu, and Benny come out, and Son, Johnson, Basuma come in. Now, I think 2 of the players leaving and 2 of the players coming in, for me, just intellectually makes total sense. You want Son on the pitch, right? It's 64 minutes, I think. You want him on the pitch if he's going to play at all. Give him enough time to get into the game. That makes total sense. And if you're bringing Werner out, I don't think anyone's complaining, right? Even though he's had a good game. Basuma, we were playing better, but anytime bring Basuma in makes sense. Obviously we're not going to get into a Brennan Johnson discussion here in terms of his value right this second. But yeah, I think that was clearly at that point. It seemed like we're at the ascendancy. We're playing really well. Ange has done his usual halftime talk or bollockings or whatever he does to shake the rust out of the players, and they come out playing really, really well. Even though I'll just say statistically, it's interesting. We actually didn't look like we got better. And that's why you can't use stats to decide how a game goes, because the passes in each other's half was relatively even. The only difference, the possession was the same. The only difference is Brighton got no shots on target in the second half, not a one. They had 2 shots the entire half. So clearly, that's the one stat you can say clearly we're doing something right, because we're now not even giving up any chances. The one chance, we'll talk about it, which is the miss by Fati. So yeah, so what were your thoughts, Isaiah? I mean, at the triple sub, were you thinking, oh, this is great, perfect timing, we're going to get fresh legs in, we got speed on the wings, we got Basuma in for Benny? Were you anticipating this to be the right move? Because it certainly seemed to kill the game for a little while.
Well, what you just said is what our NBC commentator, the analyst, whoever was on that game, I can't remember who. Other than that, I'm very critical of almost everyone all the time, that when it comes to people I don't know and on TV and doing things professionally. But usually I think all the analysts are terrible. But I thought he was all right, except for this. He says this is the perfect time for I almost said Postecoglou to make a triple change. You've got all the momentum. You're bringing on Son, and that's going to give the stadium an even bigger boost and the players. And I agree with that about Son. That's true. I think that was the perfect time to bring him on. You've just equalized, and now you're bringing on the superstar, right? That works for me. Generally, I don't like triple changes at all, because I think you've changed too many players all at once, and it throws off the rhythm that had been found. You're changing 3 out of 11 players at one time. That's a big portion of your team, and of the 10 players who are primarily moving the ball around, that's a big change. And especially, 2 of those guys that he brought on hadn't even been with the team for months. So it's not like they were, fresh off playing with all of these guys. They've been playing with their national teams. So I just think, bringing all 3 on all at one time was the wrong move. I don't know whether it was right to take Bentancur and Kulusevski off. But I think certainly you could have done Son and Basuma on, or I think Johnson is the sub I would have delayed, just because Kulusevski was starting to get better. And one of the issues we were having was not having someone who could actually shield and carry the ball until Kulusevski grew into the game a bit. And then as soon as he does and gets an assist, like HG said, he's off. I just don't know that it was a good time to take him off, and I don't know that it's ever a good time to change 3 players at once.
It's weird that I don't want to make it a Brennan Johnson thing either, right? Because it isn't really about Brennan Johnson. It isn't, right? We could have brought someone else on for Kulusevski, and I'd have thought it was a bad move, right? If Kulusevski's not in the game and not playing well, and we see that quite often, he does flit in and out quite a lot. If he's having a bad game, bring someone on, no one complains, right? No matter who it is that's coming on, you don't complain, right? However, he was playing much better in that second half. Same with Bentancur. And we can all sit here and say, look, Basuma for Bentancur, okay, I see the logic, fresh legs. There's not much difference in quality. Okay, they're going to do the same job. Maybe Basuma's better at doing it in some respects, especially if we've got the ball. Then Basuma, I feel, is much better at just distributing it and keeping it going, because Bentancur does kind of curb his natural instinct a bit more, whereas for Basuma, that is his natural instinct. He likes to be that guy. So it's, and Son for Werner, again, Werner had played well, but we all know Son's a better player, and we need someone who can provide a bit more down the wing. So those 2 made sense to me. But taking Kulusevski off, it's not about bringing Johnson on, but taking Kulusevski off felt, no, I wouldn't have done that. Right, not when he's playing well, because we would have fed him the ball. We'd have continued to feed him the ball, because when he's on it, he is on it. He's very much a momentum player. If he beats one, he'll beat a number for at least 10 minutes. And we had chances. You see the run from Porro. Porro, does he make those runs if Kulusevski's playing badly? Maybe not. Right, it's just a lot of it is kind of how they work with each other, or how they trust each other. And if Kulusevski's playing badly, then they don't trust him. Right, because they know the ball's just going to come back off him, or he's going to lose it, and so it's that. Yeah, that's the one that I agree with Isiah. That's the one that I was questioning, but all 3 at the end of it paid off. That's the crazy thing. Maybe it took 29 minutes for it to pay off, but at the end, you look like a genius.
Yeah, well, and there was change from Brighton right before the goal. Originally, from our vantage point here on the broadcast, it looked like Ferguson was coming in, but they pulled him back, and Ansu Fati was subbed in. And it was in the 76th and 78th minutes where the only chances that were mustered by Brighton the entire half fell. The first one to Fati, as you might recall, he should have scored. I mean, especially a guy of his talent, when he's fit, he should find that far corner, and he just knocks it wide. I'm watching with Isiah, and he actually was commenting, good thing they didn't bring Ferguson in, because if it falls to Ferguson, he probably buries it. But it fell to Fati, and he misses. And then of course the next one is Poro's beat 2 minutes later at midfield, and again proving that he is actually human. Mickey is megged, and then the ball gets in the box, and he ends up blocking it with his nether regions. So those were the two choices. And at first, of course, when you see him down as a heap, I had stars a little bit in my eyes, thinking something more than him just getting a ball in the nether regions, but something more fundamental. I thought maybe it's getting hamstring or whatever. I'm always waiting for I'm always waiting for the next big injury with this team. Those were the only two chances that they had, but they were decent chances, and we got away with them without, again, not a shot on goal. So then we move forward and we get subs in at the 80th. So now this is the one I think a lot of people, because I saw in the chat, a lot of people were questioning, is you bring Højbjerg and Davies in for Sarr Udogie. So I think obviously Davies for Udogie was probably a fitness issue, because I don't believe Udogie's on a card at this point like Sarr, right? Sarr, I think, if he hadn't been on a card, maybe he doesn't come out, or this is one of these opportunities for Højbjerg to, all right, let's settle it down, let's get control, whatever it is. What were your thinking? Were you happy with these subs when they came in? HG, are you questioning the logic, and what was that?
No, I think the key thing for me is that, like, when they show Højbjerg about to come on, Skip is standing next to him, and at that point I was like, okay, no, I don't want to see both of them, like one or the other. If you're going to bring Sarr off, which I don't have an issue with really, then one of the two. Again, for me, it would have been Højbjerg, so I don't have a massive problem with that. But I think that Udogie, certainly when it comes to celebrating the winner, you see him and he's got an ice pack on the back of his leg, right? So I think Udogie had to have been injured, which is why Davies was the one to come on instead of Skip. And again, if Udogie is not fit, then yeah, I'll take Davies every time. He's the best replacement for him. So I don't necessarily have an issue. The Sarr one, okay, he had a good game. And he's got, he's played 80 minutes. I can handle 15 minutes of Højbjerg. I'm not one of those who is really anti the Danish guy. I don't mind him coming on. And I don't think he was terrible. I don't think he was great. I think he just comes on and provides you what Sarr does provide you for a short amount of time. So I didn't have too many issues, but I would have had an issue had it been Højbjerg and Skip, because then it almost certainly would have been, you'd have had Bissouma, Højbjerg and Skip in midfield. And when you're looking for a winner,
yeah, you're not getting it.
You're unlikely to, I would say. Like, you're
right.
more likely to keep Maddison on and see what happens. And well, we know what happens, because Maddison starts the move that leads to the winner.
Yeah, and since this is a stats heavy show today, or tactics heavy, maybe I could even say, this comment was earlier in the show, and I saved it because we have a graphic that kind of backs this up. Is that I didn't realize this, but John, our excellent producer, and pulled this out, and I'll be honest with you, high turnovers is not a phrase that an American football fan is, or American who's a fan of football is familiar with, but I get the gist, because I initially thought this is an example. Oh yeah, we lead the league in giving the ball up in our own territory. But then I look at the other teams. Yeah, we probably do. Actually, we probably do. I think I know we're very high. But then I look at the other teams on this list. I was like, okay, no, this is us winning the ball high up the pitch. And you see both teams. And then I think this is one of the things that was frustrating to watch, and why I don't like playing Brighton, is because we play such similar styles, and when we're not clicking, it just creates a lot of anxiety. So again, there's a great meme out there of a video of people celebrating because it says, this is what I feel like thinking about watching Tottenham play. And then there's another video of some sullen face about, this is what it's actually like watching Tottenham play, right? And this is one of the reasons why, is because we are playing a team that does what we like to do, was doing to us. But I didn't realize that we were actually leading league. And the one that's very interesting, of course, the outlier that doesn't make sense, is Everton. I think you could have given, who's second in this statistic in the Premier League. I don't think anyone was going to come up with Everton.
Well, see, the interesting
except Everton fans maybe, who watch them every week.
Well, quite. And I think Everton, when they played against Tottenham, had the most high turnovers of any game they've had in, like, with the stats. So maybe they had like over 20 against Spurs alone. So, okay, maybe they'd be at the lower end of that table, right? Because they'd still be around the Arsenal, Man City area. But again, like high turnovers, like a lot of those teams, I mean, again, Everton really are the outlier because they don't tend to have possession. They have to win it high up to get the possession. Whereas the rest of them, like I feel like Man City, they don't necessarily need to do high turnovers. They can win it wherever they want to on the pitch. And then teams will just allow them to have the ball and hope that they can maybe hit on the counter. But yeah, like this is the way football is going. It is this weird idea that like playing in your own area is a good idea because then if you can break it, you have space to really attack and a much higher chance of scoring. But of course, if you lose it, you have a much higher chance of conceding. And so it's kind of, I mean, it makes it more exciting. I think, was it last weekend we had the most goals of any match day in Premier League history? Like 45 in 10 games or something?
Yeah.
And this obviously, I'm suggesting there is something to do with that teams want to play kind of high risk football, and the better ones are getting away with it more, let's say.
Right. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So we obviously we know how the game ended. This is
the one you just
one
had.
more forward. Yeah, this is the beginning. So this is actually the ball. I think comes to Madison from Davies, if I'm not mistaken, but don't hold me to that. And this is a really great 3-man game because it basically between Madison, Son, and Richarlison, they each. The movement, I wish I could play the video for everyone. And if you haven't rewatched it like I have 50 times, watch it another 50 times because you actually watch the movement of all 3 players. It's exceptional. And Richarlison's movement is particularly good because he comes back, plays with Madison, and then moves forward and receives the ball again. And so this sequence actually is much better than I originally gave it credit for. And
can we go back again?
Yeah.
Just to go back one thing, because you talked about this earlier, and I want to point out that it's the same here, right? So just before this has happened, Richarlison has come deep to get the ball, and that's why Dunk is where he is, right? You find Lewis Dunk, he's kind of two to the right of where the ball is.
Yep.
So Lewis Dunk is massively out of position, and Van Hecke has been dragged forward too. And you talked earlier about the gap between the fullbacks that Sarr was running into, and there was no one there to stop it. Well, look, we see it again. The centre-backs have moved forward with the ball, and Bissouma, in effect, is the Sarr in this case. But whereas Richarlison couldn't move the ball into the space, we've played it back to a man that can. And so really, Madison has a couple of balls on here, right? He could play it into the gap in the middle for Bissouma to run onto, or we can play it to Richarlison, which is what he does. But the gaps are there. Like we have been able to control the ball under pressure, move the ball away from the centre-back who's up Richarlison's butt, and then we can move forward with it. And so that bearing in mind that you brought it up earlier, which I hadn't seen in that earlier chance, but I knew it was coming in this, then we see it. You go to the next thing, you can see what happens from there as we get the ball to Richarlison.
And we have a surprise guest. James. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good.
Yeah. So we're just going through the sequence for the winner. So, and Richarlison, as you mentioned, receives the ball from Madison and doesn't do anything crazy, doesn't do anything fancy. He just moves the ball with pace. Forces a decision to the defense. Sonny holds his run because I could tell you right now, I'd bet anyone, a $5 that Werner strays forward into the offside spot.
But you say that like he's only on because his Stupinen's not kept the line.
Well, that's
if
true.
Stupinen keeps the line, Son is off.
That's fair. All right. Yeah.
But I mean,
so
it's crazy because it shouldn't happen. Like you're right, Werner would do it, and Werner would be offside. But
it'd be much further offsides. Let me rephrase.
Probably,
Sorry.
Yeah. But it's just interesting that you see that like you've got the 2 fullbacks, and then in the middle is the defensive midfielder who's run back and got into position as Bissouma jogs. Like I love this. When you watch the video, you see Bissouma, who Madison could have played the ball into earlier but didn't, and Bissouma's just jogging. He's got no interest in actually getting forward to being, let's say, he's 9.
Occupying defenders. You slandered him with the Tanguy statement in our group chat. You said in peak Tanguy form or whatever it is you said.
He's just jogging. He's not trying to move anyone. He's just jogging.
And even better yet, this is at this moment actually right here. All right, right before he sends the ball, let's say maybe a second before. All right, Bissouma's like this. I'm like, what are you going to do at the top of the box with the ball? Isiah, what do you remember? So here's the moment of truth. Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, Basuma is. Well, let me roll that back. I would like to give Basuma the benefit of the doubt that he is thinking, if I sprint forward, I'm going to engage those center backs and they're going to know I'm here. Right now, they're not even looking at me, and I can go to the top of the box, and if there's space for a cutback, then I can get onto that. Now, the problem with that, if that was his intention, is that should now be Richarlison's job, because Richarlison's just made the pass and is out of the play, and Basuma should be filling the 9. Now, if he does, he might get in the way of what ends up being a goal, but just by coincidence. But I'd like to think it's that he's thinking, I'm the midfielder, so I need to be top of the box and do that. Yeah. If the ball comes to me, rather than him being lazy, but that would still be the wrong choice.
Yeah. And then, of course, everyone's favorite 22-year-old Welsh winger, James.
It's a lovely tap-in.
James.
It's a fantastic finish by Brennan, and I would hope people would maybe stop complaining about him a little bit. He's actually a very good player.
No.
Did you see the tweet that said even if Brennan Johnson scored 400 tap-ins, he'd still be terrible? I was like, well, if he scores 400 tap-ins, he'd be our all-time top scorer. I wouldn't complain about that.
400 tap-ins, he'd be the best striker in the world. That's what it's like Pippo Inzaghi. Yeah. Sorry, go on, James.
It's about getting in the right space, isn't it? It's no different from Raheem Sterling. Like, Sterling can't finish, but getting in the right space is a skill in and of itself. Positional awareness is a skill. And he got in the right space and he won us 3 points. So can we, lay off him for a little bit, maybe for a week or two? That'd be lovely. Cheers, guys.
Are we going to talk about the other 29 minutes when he was anonymous, where he lost the ball repeatedly?
And about 2 seconds won us 3 points.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that is the wallpaper over the massive crack that is Brennan Johnson. Like, I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic that he was there and that he tapped it in from 6 yards. But you know what? If I went to Salford City and I saw a player from there watching the ball come to him, you'd expect someone at Salford City to score that goal. Like, I'm sorry, yeah, he's young and all the rest of it, all the other excuses that people give you. But for 29 minutes, he was the worst player on the pitch.
I think that's very reductive. I think it's incredibly...
to ignore the negative things. No, wait, to ignore. I'm not ignoring anything. You're the one who's ignoring the 29 minutes and saying that I'm being reductive. How does that work?
Well, oh God, I'm too sober for this conversation.
Well, let's go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, no, it's just he always gets himself in consistently good positions. Okay, yes, he does lack confidence in taking players one-on-one. He is struggling in that regard. It is his first season at a big club, but I have, on a first-hand basis, seen what he can do in big games. For example, for Wales in a lot of international games, and he does. He scores. He did score that goal. You could equally say, well, what did Kai Havertz do for Chelsea in the Champions League final against Man City? Yeah, scored 1 goal. What did he do? Yeah, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, he scored the goal. He's obviously lacking confidence, and yes, I do acknowledge the fact that he has played under our expectations, but I equally think his price tag.
What are our expectations? I don't have an expectation based on his price tag. I have an expectation that he's a Premier League footballer and he should be able to control the ball and find a teammate and actually work for the ball. He doesn't do those things. Like Steven Bergwijn scored a number of goals in his first few games for Spurs. It doesn't make him a good player. Like, I understand that we all want him to be amazing. Like, of course we do. We're all grateful that he scored the goal. But if you look at the performance, the overall performance, that goal papers over the massive crack that is Brennan Johnson. He doesn't add anything to the team. The team was worse in the half hour he was on the pitch than they were the 15 minutes beforehand. Sorry, that's true. And that's not just Brennan's fault, but he doesn't add anything. He is a passenger, and we are fortunate that Son's ability to cross the ball meant that he had something in the game that was worthwhile to talk about.
he has. I'm a little frustrated with his passing, quite frankly, because he's not, even when he gets on the ball, his passing accuracy is a bit of an issue. But at least in this game, I thought he was actually better than he was previously. I mean, he actually did win some duels on the ground. He did actually have some activity. But what I pointed out in the last time we were together, HG, is that, you know, the team isn't targeting him. And I mentioned this because he's on the pitch, and it's not that how many times he gets the ball, it's how many times he's even attempted to get the ball. In other words, a lot of times, you know, people look for him and they'll try to make a pass that doesn't come off, but they're not actually even getting the ball, trying to get the ball to him. And that's a little worrisome. I'm starting to be concerned that the players on his teammates aren't looking for him. And the question is is he not doing what he's supposed to be doing, or is it they're deciding that they've got better options? And
I hope he's carrying an injury, but when you sit here and say he did have some activity as if it's a positive, come on now.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's positive. I'm saying that I'm one of these people who knows that you can't draw grand conclusions from players early on in their careers or early off their switches. There's too many examples of people who start great and then completely fade away, who take a long time to settle. I'm glad that he was on the pitch because I don't know that. Well, I know for a fact that Kulu doesn't get to that ball. Right. No, so as a result,
he comes on at 85 minutes and he does the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like, I mean, that's what we're talking about. Like, I don't think Kulusevski was amazing in the game, but I don't think he deserved to be taking off. And I think when you look at the game, we got worse. Son is an improvement over Werner. Bissouma and Bentancur is pretty much the same. I don't think that Bissouma was amazing. I think that the team, like in midfield with Sarr there, we were better in midfield in the second half. And so Johnson looked great. If his role is to come on for 10 minutes and score tap-ins, and he does it, wonderful. I will never complain again. But like, no, I won't. No, I won't.
You're very animated tonight, HG.
Because
Brennan Johnson.
I feel like people are just so willing to overlook 95% of what's happening on the idea that it will change for the better when there's no guarantee that it will change for the better. He could do a Steven Bergwijn and change for the worse. Like, no one knows. So all we can do is judge him on what he has done at Spurs. He scored 3 tap-ins, brilliant. In fact, I will say this, the goal he scored at Wolves was fantastic movement to get ahead of the defender and get on the end of Porro's cross. That showed actual desire, but that's all we're really seeing. We're seeing tap-ins, and I'm standing there, and if the ball is played to me, then maybe I'll do something. I don't really offer runs around the back.
Yeah.
I don't, and like if he showed anything like that, great. Like I don't think Werner's played well for Spurs either, but we could sit here and say like he's there and he wants the ball and all those things. I just don't think Brennan really wants the ball. Like, if he's not being targeted, is it because he's not making the runs? He gets beaten in so many 50-50s when the ball is played into an area and he has to win that challenge. He has to get there before the fullback and he just doesn't do it. So I don't like goals are amazing. Absolutely, they are amazing. But I'm not going to judge a player if their job is more than just goal scoring. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I will say that all of the criticisms and the defense of Brennan Johnson makes sense to me, because I feel like, again, it's just too early to draw conclusions, and I trust this coaching staff to work with players to give them the opportunity to be better, show them what they're doing well.
Needs it.
Yeah, and we'll see. I always said by November, December of next season, I think I'll know a lot more about what he's going to bring. I think by then he'll have a year in the system, he'll have a full preseason.
Do you need that? Do you need that to talk about Van der Ven? Do you need a year to talk about Udogie? Like, I mean,
I'm saying it's all logical. Yeah, but not every player's but not every player's the same. And I'm just willing to say that there could be a player that becomes all of the things that we want as a winger to be, And
I would love it.
Again, I always say there's been a few flares of unbelievable talent and skill. I always go back to the same thing every time. That goal is chalked off in the North London derby where he takes it over his head, drops it down in stride and roots it. There's only so many players who can do that, and so if he can harness that and develop the confidence, what worries me a little bit is the shot that he had before. So I don't know how many minutes before this, the shot he takes, he gets in, he beats the guy, he's in front, right? He's taking the ball in on goal, and then he just rolls it to steal. And that's not the first time he's done that. He's done that consistently when he's got in open spots in the box. So there are clear things of like actual skill that he should be working on in training. And one of them is that ball's played in front of him. He's going to take it one time. He's going to put his laces through it, and he needs to find someone other than the shoes of the opposing keeper, right? If he can develop some testing the goalkeeper so that you get a rebound for someone who's coming on something, that's a little bit concerning. But I'm always going to say the jury's out. Yeah, no, Van de Ven, clearly there's no time for him to settle. Same thing with Doggy, but everyone's different, and those are also defenders. And I think that what you're asking attackers to do and defenders to do are different, and not that one's better or worse or harder than easier.
I definitely would agree with that. I just think that like if we're willing to judge people on what we see, why is it only allowed for people if you judge them positively? Like Brennan Johnson could have a wonderful 6 months, turn his game around, and people will say, "Oh, you were wrong." Well, no. If he changes his game and starts playing better, then brilliant. That's what everybody wants to see. Even the people that defend him, they want to see an improvement. They're just giving excuses as to why we're not seeing it now. And to me, I'm just talking about what I'm seeing. And what I'm seeing is someone who is on the bench, and probably deservedly so. Like that's just unfortunate. I don't care about his price tag. Price tag means nothing to me, right? I wouldn't have paid it. But, It's just about what do you do on the field. When he was playing left wing, I gave him loads of slack because that's not his position. But this is his position. Like, if he's going to play Ange ball, he's going to be playing on the right-hand side of the attack. So what are you going to do? You've got to show it. You can't just sit there. Like maybe in the summer, we buy someone else who's better than him and his chance is gone. Right? And then so for Brennan Johnson, like it just feels so simple to be like, okay, well, maybe he'll be better next week. Yeah, maybe he will.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that the first dollar spent this summer will be on the right wing. We'll see how we got 13 games left or whatever it is. We'll see. Maybe those 13 games prove that we do need to invest more money in that position. But I'd be surprised if that's where they look first and foremost. But it's what I find amazing. Isaiah, I don't know your thoughts on this, but it is amazing the amount of attention, time, and ink, and there's not a criticism. I'm just observing that the Johnson debate, certain players seem to become a lightning rod in the fan base, and I'm kind of curious as to why Johnson is it right now. And again, I don't see it. In other words, I'm not saying it's wrong. It just seems to be a lot of time being spent on whether he is what he's giving or not giving. I don't know what your thoughts.
The people who will defend Brennan Johnson against absolutely anything, I find, don't like Kulusevski. And the people who, well, not always, but people who really don't like Brennan Johnson, I found more likely to really like Kulusevski. And I think a lot of times when you have a contended position between two players who aren't giving you consistent displays, I mean, you could argue Johnson's been a little more consistently poor, and Kulu's at least had more ups. And speaking of Johnson, his pass accuracy for the entire season is 76%. That's the second worst on the team behind Richie. It's worse than the goalkeeper. That to me is shocking. And he was 67% pass accuracy against Brighton. So he was even worse pass accuracy wise than usual.
But he's also getting very few passes made. I mean, actually, number of opportunities. Yeah,
he had fewer passes than the other substitutes. But Son came on and completed 11 of 12 of his. Basuma came on and completed 17 out of 17 at 100% pass accuracy after coming on, right? Højbjerg came on and was in the 80s. Davies, I didn't even look at Davies. I forgot he even came on. But Richarlison's pass accuracy is bad because a lot of the times he's trying to make passes while a center back is slamming into his back, right? But Johnson's not. And I feel like it's just – like HG is not saying that Johnson will never ever be a good footballer. What he's saying is
No,
that
he's
right
not saying
now
that. Yeah.
he's not a good footballer. Since he's been playing for Spurs, he's not been one, and I don't think that's debatable from a footballer standpoint. Has he been effective at times we've needed him? Absolutely, yeah. And like HG says, if that means he's the last minute sub, we're trying to get somebody with some pace to get in on that right back post for a tap in, or get across and get something into the box for Richarlison, fine. But for me, I just think I don't like Kulusevski as a right winger because he doesn't do the right winger things that the winger things that Son would do on the left, right? Mm-hmm. But Kulusevski on the right does provide something. People don't like Kulusevski on the right the same way I don't, but I don't think a lot of people realize what his sort of boring role on that right-hand side when he's not in the final third is, and how important it is to the way we play. So
yeah. He provides a lot of cover. He provides a lot of shield. He provides a lot of tracking back. He's more involved off the ball than people realize. In the same way that Sarr
in transitioning, and he's able to hold the ball in the opponent half for a long time and allow our players to get forward. When we don't have that, as soon as he came off, even though he hadn't been playing well up until a few minutes before the goal, as soon as he came off, there was a shift in our ability to maintain possession. Our possession started dropping. They actually had more of the ball in that phase of the game leading up to our winner than they did for the rest of it. So Johnson gives you turnovers and moments. Kulusevski gives you security, and sometimes he doesn't give you, and a lot of the times he doesn't give you enough in the final third. And I will take, went real Southern there, I will take the security and the occasional, game of brilliance, like against Manchester City as the starter on that right side. I don't think Johnson should be near the games before, the 80th minute, unless Decky's just awful.
Well, and the funny thing is, sorry, I mean, I checked, I'm that nerd with all the spreadsheets, right? There have been 2 times this season where Johnson has replaced Kulusevski or Kulusevski has replaced Johnson. Only 2, because we've had so many injuries and so many movements that they've had to play in different places. It's only the Everton game last week and the Brighton game on Saturday where they've literally replaced each other, right? Now, I would say that I don't think Kulusevski played well at Everton. I think he was largely responsible for the goal we conceded, if only for the fact it was dumb to give away the free kick that we conceded from. Yep. But I would also say that really for the half hour before that where he was on, Everton didn't really like scoring. Like Spurs were a little bit more secure. Like as I was saying, he offers security. He didn't offer any goal for it against Everton, not really. And he caused the free kick that we conceded from. So you could sit there and say, okay, Kulusevski played badly. I agree. Like Kulusevski is not a wonderful player every single week, but I could say, and I do think that we are better with him in the side because he can hold the ball up than Johnson. Johnson can give you the goals. He scored as many goals as Kulusevski, right? I mean, I understand that there's obviously an importance to it, but is it enough? Maybe not. Like Kulusevski offers versatility as well. He can play in other positions. Johnson, like the left wing, okay. He did really well at I saw him score assist at Palace. Like he was a massive part of that goal. Did really well. But again, that's end of October. It's 3.5 months ago. Like 3.5 months ago. It's a struggle. And I really want him to get better. But I think that part of the side is, and we've talked about this on other shows, that's where we need to improve. I saw a comment from, I think Kerry asked what I think about Richarlison now. Richarlison's finally playing centre forward. Do you know what I mean? Last season, he never played centre forward at all. He was playing on the right of the 3. He was playing where Kulusevski should be playing, which is just mental because they're so different. This year, I think it was the first 2 or 3 games he was a centre forward, and then he got bumped out to the left and Son moved in. And then they made that switch again. And now I feel like, Richarlison scoring goals, he feels more comfortable. Like when you score 9 in 8 or 9 in 9 or whatever it is for him in the Premier League, that's a good goal scorer. I don't think he's a great finisher, but if he's there on the end of the chances you create, well, that's what you want from a finisher. That's what Ange central strikers do. they get on the end of the work that everyone else has done, right? I mean, so that it's just that we are close. We are close to being what we want to be, and it's just frustrating that we aren't there when I think that we could be better just through some very simple changes.
James, I'll let you have the last word before we finish the show on our last topic. Looking forward a little bit.
I don't think Kul is a winger. I think he's an 8. Ultimately, like, I do not think he's a particularly good wide player. He's a much better 8. When you look at him, very good at ball retention, very good at creating chances. He's not particularly quick, which isn't an issue. I just don't think he's a winger. I think he's a much better 8 than he is a winger. Brennan offers a very specific category of player, and it's frustrating for me in particular because I've seen him play at a very high level and with a lot of confidence for Wales. And it's something that's annoying to me because I don't see that in him when he plays for Spurs, because I've seen him play for Wales and he has all this confidence and he wants to take on players. He wants to take everybody on. He feels like he can beat them. I just don't see that for him at Spurs. So to me, that seems like a confidence issue. I'm not quite sure what it is because I've seen what he could be, what he has been and what he could be for Spurs, but it just doesn't seem to be clicking right now, which is why I defend him quite a lot. But I'm hoping it clicks. I'm hoping it's just a bit of a mental thing. And if he has a full preseason under Ange, he just gets over that hurdle. I mean, some players need a year to acclimatise at a club. Not everyone's the same. He has underperformed a little bit. I completely accept that, but I still think there is an incredibly good player there. My other issue is, I don't think Kulu is a wide player. I think he's a much better 8. And I think his best position is probably alongside Maddison. The only issue is then how do you get that midfield balance right? Because then you're playing with 1-6, who loses out Sarr, Bentancur, Bissouma. Those are some difficult trades to make, but I think ultimately that's a good issue to have, right? When you're having to say, who do I play in my midfield out of all these great players? That's a good issue to have, isn't it, right? So there's that issue as well. But let's reserve judgment until next season. If he's underperforming next season, we can have that conversation. But right now, he is contributing a bit.
He is contributing. Yeah, the goals itself. Yeah. If only for that. Yeah.
If only for that, let's give it. Because I do know what he can be like and how good of a player he can be. And if he's still underperforming next season, then we have that difficult conversation. But let's give him until next season. And then if I'm still wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong.
Right. Well, let's look a little forward here. So we've got some questions coming from the audience wondering. I actually grabbed the wrong one. I think this is this is what I was looking for. So obviously I think most of us can, Ange was asked about the supercomputer from Opta that gave us a 0.1 chance of getting into winning the league, of course. So the appropriate response was, so you're telling me we've got a chance. So that's obviously true. But I don't think the 4 of us or anyone in the audience really sees that as a likely possibility with obviously the way that we're seeing the 3 teams ahead of us playing and performing. And so I don't think that's we the nice thing is it's in our control. We play all those teams. We take points from those teams. We win out. Obviously we could possibly do it, but I don't think it's a high possibility, obviously. So realistically, I think this is the slide that shows the rest of our matches, right?
Yep.
So Wolves are next. I'm going to do a preview here. Obviously Crystal Palace is a new manager. That'll be perfect. Then obviously we have a good run. West Ham, that I watched a good chunk of that Arsenal match. I've never seen anything like that before. The West Ham were atrocious. I mean, I honestly think that you could have suited me up 20 years ago and I could have defended that well. And then we get into the tough, obviously, April runs. So what is the expectation for you, HD? How many points are we going to have to acquire to guarantee that 4th slot, as opposed to hoping that the English teams do well in Europe and get that 5th spot? Because I think the gap between, obviously United is starting to put it together. They're healthy. They actually looked pretty good this weekend again, so they could make a run, but they got a lot of points to make up, and they can't make up directly on us since we're done with that fixture. So what are your thoughts on how many points we're going to have to get to make sure we get into the top 4 and set us up for Champions League football next season?
I see the comment that Adrian has put. They're saying 72 is needed. That, like, I've always thought about 70. I've always thought it was win half your games and get to about 70. Right, that was the kind of thing. If you win 20 games, that's 60 points, and then you maybe get 10 draws, and that should get you there or thereabouts. Well, we're on 14 wins right now, but the problem is there are a number of teams that have won half their games, including Man United and Villa. Right, so you've got 6 teams going for what maybe will be 5, definitely 4 places. And so winning games is really what's going to matter. Those 2 points at Everton are going to piss me off, probably, because it was just right at the end. Like those 2 points, we'd feel a lot more comfortable. I don't like seeing Man United 6 points behind. They're not out of it at all.
No,
right?
No.
And I mean, the good thing for Man United, Villa and Spurs is that, well, Man United have played Villa and Spurs twice. So they can focus on all the other things. Whereas that Villa Spurs game in a few weeks is going to be crucial. But after that, there's still 10 games? Like a third of the season. No, a third. Yeah, no, a quarter of the season, like, where you're not playing against your main rivals. And so chances are they're going to have similar games to the ones we've got. Right. So clearly we can all see at the end of April, we've got 3 tough games in a row, the 3 biggest teams in the league, the 3 best teams in the league. And there's a very good chance, I would say, that probably that Chelsea game will end up between the Spurs and Arsenal, the Man City and Arsenal home games. I have a feeling they'll put it there, right? If they can't leave it till the end of the season, they'll put it there because that just makes for good TV. There's no European football that midweek. It is what it is. Like, it would suck for Spurs. I don't know why we can't play it, or we couldn't play it this week, or there's Champions League this week, or whenever there's a gap.
Europe starts. Yeah.
Because if you think about that, Chelsea, the game is postponed because they're in the Carabao Cup final, right?
Yep.
Against Liverpool. Well, Liverpool's postponed game from that weekend has been moved 3 days earlier. So ours could be then as well, right? It could be that midweek as well. But for some reason, Sky have decided they're going to leave it. They've got this wonderful chess piece that's going to bump up the drama at the end of the season. And it might screw Spurs. Like, I don't want to see Spurs play Newcastle, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool in a row. But why not? Like, the first year we got to the Champions League, we played, what was it, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Man United in a week. Like, and we won both home games. If we win both home games, 6 points out of 15 wouldn't be horrific if you win them, right? But it's just that our entire season will probably rest on those games. Everything else, like, we'll drop a few points probably against West Ham, and we might scrape a win against Fulham and not look that great. But I think 70 should be enough in my head. But yeah, well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, three teams could finish with over 90, which has never happened. But all 3 teams ahead are on a pace to do that. That would be interesting. So, I mean, there seems to be a lot of pessimism among our viewers about the possibility that we're gonna actually get a top 4 spot. So therefore, if we get in the Champions League, it's going to be because 5th is awarded a Champions League spot. If I just look at across the comments, it seems a lot of doubt with this run of fixtures. James, are you seeing hopeful signs that the form that we're playing, are we just barely eking out some results, or are we actually going to see the team start to perform at a higher level and actually run this out?
I mean, if you look at our points average and every team's points average over the entire season so far, we'll finish around 75, 74, something like that ish points, 76 maybe, can't remember entirely. That will be enough. Actually, that would be enough for 3rd place last season, I think, something like that. And if you look at the teams above us, they probably won't get to 90 points unless City go on one of their crazy, like, inhuman streaks. But it does very much look as if we will get 3rd or 4th. If we have some ridiculous injuries, maybe not. But I do very much think we will finish 3rd or 4th. And I also think we'll finish within 10 points of whoever wins the league. Don't think we'll win the league, but I think we'll finish within 10 points or so.
And why is that 10-point gap so important, James?
Well, it'd be 15 points that's important to me. I'm just saying.
Oh, is it 15? Is that the bet?
Yeah, that's the bet. But I think 10 points from my analysis is where I think it would be. And rest assured, that money will be spent on some balls of whiskey. So
yeah, okay. It's just for the audience. So my son Isiah and James have a what's the amount of is it 50 pounds?
Yeah, 50 quid.
Yeah.
50 pounds.
Which we made at the beginning of the season, by the way.
Before the season started, yeah.
And everyone looked at me like I was a crazy person.
And what's the bet specifically? That will be within 15 points.
I said if we're within 15 points of whoever wins the league, Isiah will give me 50 quid. And if we're not, then I'll give him 50 quid. And everyone looked at me like I was crazy. Exactly. I said 15. And actually, does that not look like such a crazy bet now? Everyone thought I was mad for making that bet, but
I will say that I did see that those odds, was it 538, the website, they came out and said that England has like a 79% chance of getting one of those two spots for the Champions League, which would mean fifth equals the Champions League. But regardless of what happens, Spurs are going to have European football, right? And whether it's Europa League, I suspect that's because that would be top 6 most likely. If it's Europa League, then it's the same amount of games. But I just I've always been one that says my daughter's birthday is at the end of March, which is usually international break, right? And that's when the business end of the season starts. And if we are there or thereabouts, then great. But there's a good chance that 5 of our final 7 games will be Newcastle, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool. Right? I mean, I can sit here and say they will be vital, but I know Spurs enough to know that we'll drop points against the teams we should beat, and we may well beat City and Arsenal in a week. Right? Beat both of them. Because Spurs can do that. It's just it'll be kind of one of those things on the day that Spurs will do what Spurs do. They will drop points when they're not supposed to, and they will gain points when we don't expect them. And hopefully at the end of it, we talked about other teams, like Man United don't have Europe, but Villa do. But Villa's Europe is Conference League, which they should be able to get through relatively untroubled until maybe the semi-finals. So right. It's weird. I guess we got the 3 against Brighton, which was maybe fortunate. We didn't get the 3 against Everton, which was probably unfortunate. So you could say 4 points from those 2 performances, fair enough. Yeah. But Wolves will be a tough game. Palace will probably have a new manager, right?
Who lost to Chelsea 3-1 on 2 stoppage time goals, and Gallagher had a brace. So someone in the comments said Gallagher's price just went up, which is fine that somebody else can pay it. But and we're not getting into that debate, fortunately. Yeah, so I think that this is the one thing I know about fans is they are as victim to recency bias as any human condition that I know of. And I saw some comments about, given the way we played the last few matches, we're not getting anywhere close to 4th. The problem is we're not going to be there's no reason you should assume that the performance you saw against, Brighton and Everton, which I think were not as bad as people are saying they were. If you actually rewatch the game, it's an execution issue, but we are now finally full strength for the first time in 4 months. Mm-hmm. And they're actually going to be on the training pitches together with, I think, a staff that knows what they're doing. And I would say that there's no reason why that I don't even think 3rd is unreasonable, because I still worry, not worry, that's the wrong word. I still hope that Arsenal's lack of squad depth and playing and trying to get deep in the Champions League is going to cause them issues. Now, that's a lot of hope as a Spurs fan, but I still think that's a reality. I know that, Aston Villa, I don't think Europe's a huge issue. I don't think that's a big deal, but you can see their form is not where it was 3 months ago. They're not trending the right direction. And so you shouldn't assume that they couldn't turn it around. I just think that the team is finally straight. We're now leaving people out of the match day squad who were starting or were the first sub not long ago. So we can now rotate this team. We can actually sub 3 or 4 players on, and the levels may not drop. So I think that we should be fairly positive about the situation. And to your point, we will get Europe. We will be in Europe one way or another, because it just doesn't seem, barring some cataclysmic event, I just can't see you dropping far enough out.
I mean, this is it. So if Chelsea win the Carabao, that makes it a bit tighter in the league, because they're nowhere near a European spot in the league, right? But if Liverpool win the Carabao, which we all hope they do, then sixth is probably guaranteed a spot. FA Cup, we don't really know where it will go, but usually one of the top 6-7 teams wins that too. So I feel lucky that, you look at those teams that we've got in the next 7, like Forest are battling relegation, Luton are battling relegation, Fulham aren't far out of it, Palace aren't far. Like they won't be easy games. So as much as I look at them and think they will be easier, they're still difficult, right? But I do like the fact that we have Burnley and Sheffield United in the last 2, because by that point they may well be down.
Yes,
and they may well have nothing to exactly. So like you wouldn't want to play them if they were battling for it, but there's a good chance.
And there's no chance the Spurs team could lose 5-1 to an already relegated team at the last game of the season, right?
No, well, Lamella's not here, so that's why. Yeah. No, I mean that would be that. I mean, the thing is, at that point, finishing second or third to me means little, right?
No, it doesn't mean anything. It's a few more. It's a few more quid for Daniel, but that's about it.
It would have been nice to finish above Arsenal because we hadn't done it at that point, but that's really all was on it, and that's not a guarantee of a decent side. Like if Arsenal are crowing about finishing above Spurs, it means they haven't won the league, which is what they want to be crowing about. And if Spurs are doing the same about Arsenal, it's sibling rivalry.
No one cares.
Third
versus fourth or second versus fourth at all is irrelevant.
No. So I feel as if it's one game at a time. But talk to me again at Easter, when it's international break, and then we've got 10 games left, and it will be, every game will be ridiculously important.
It's a weird rivalry, Woolwich Spurs, in a lot of ways. Because I'm talking from my perspective here purely. It's a rivalry that there's a lot of hate in a footballing sense, but there's not that much hate, if that makes sense. And I'm talking purely from my perspective as I should say, precariously a Portsmouth fan. There is legitimate hate for Southampton here, right? In my sense, I don't feel a lot of hate for Arsenal. I don't really care about them. Meanwhile, I've lived in Portsmouth 18 months, and I refuse to call anyone from Southampton anything other than a, quote, scummer. It is weird rivalry in the Premier League because it doesn't feel as legitimate in a lot of ways. But I don't really care what Arsenal do. I just care what Spurs do. And hopefully we finish above them. But hey ho, we have a better manager than them. We'll finish above them next year if we don't this year. Their manager's 5 foot tall and a bit of a weirdo, so it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, and I'll just say, Mr. English, the one thing I'll say is that it wasn't a corrupt decision. I can promise you. We've listened to the recording. It was the all-time most incompetent decision of VAR's storied and infamous run that we've had. So it's not a corrupt. It was purely incompetence, and some of us feel it's hurt us ever since.
And before Christmas, we hadn't sustained some of the losses that we have now, and we hadn't had some of the injuries and absences. Yes, things change over time. That's shocking.
Yeah.
So
I know, the idea that Spurs, I can't say Spurs were unlucky because we were lucky against Liverpool. They're different games. What kind of nonsense is that?
We were lucky against Liverpool.
Yeah, we were lucky against Liverpool. Everyone has said that. But that doesn't mean we can't be unlucky at a different point in a different game. That's just ridiculous.
Every team gets lucky decisions at some point and unlucky decisions at some point. I mean, Brighton got 3 penalties against us this season in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And, at the Brighton game at the Amex, which, by the way, the Amex is a bloody library. I don't think I've ever heard of worse support from a set of fans. 4-1 up and they still can't sing. Meanwhile, I've been at Pompey 3-0 down and bloody Pompey fans sing louder. Anyway, and Spurs had decisions against them. Look, every team gets decisions go against them and for them. Overall, I guess it probably evens out over the course of a season or two. And yes, a lot of the decisions are wrong. But it's not because the officials are targeting your team. It's just because, honestly, it's human error. And a lot of the refs are a bit, I don't even want to say bad. It's human error, isn't it? At some point. And it goes against you, it goes for you. And every decision that goes for you, you forget in your head. It's only decisions that go against you that you remember, I think. I think it's bias in that sense. Yeah,
Sports
you can go to the Amex to read books. Also, you can go to St Mary's to read books, mate. They ain't got any support in Southampton.
I could hear it from my bedroom window. They've got some support.
Don't think so, mate.
I lived there. I heard him.
You bloody scummer.
All right, well, guys, we've been going an hour and 44 minutes, and I usually try to keep, when I'm hosting, to 75 minutes, but we burned extra time on Johnson and a lot more time on this one. I'm not complaining at all. I have plenty of time. Actually, I'm not being crushed, but I do think we ought to wrap it up. James, I want to thank you for the surprise guest appearance and to come in and defend your countrymen from this vicious attack that was being launched by the Cheese Room, and particularly that attack that was coming from Vienna. So I think that it was admirable of you to come in. Thank you very much. Hope forward you're going to be on the show again, regularly scheduled. Hope soon.
Hopefully soon. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's just an anti-Welsh bias here. Classic, English-born arrogance. But pleasure to be on as ever. Thank you for letting me hop on. It's very kind of you. Yeah, I haven't got to work for another hour or so nice to hop on. So yeah, just having me.
Yeah. All right. And HG, thank you for joining us and your passion that you bring every time. I know sometimes I need to know when I need to take a break. All I need to do is just mention Brennan Johnson, and I can turn my camera and my mic off and I can go do some stuff for a while. So that's a really great way to run a show. Awesome. I really appreciate it.
And if you don't want to hear about Brennan Johnson, you're in luck, because this Friday I can't be on the show. So it'll be someone else talking about Brennan Johnson. I'm sure it will come up. I mean, it's a topic amongst Spurs fans. It is, sadly. And I wish it was more than it is, but anyway, I've enjoyed tonight, and it's been a very quick hour and 45 minutes, much better than watching Chelsea win. So
yes, that's absolutely. So all right, and Isiah, I will see you shortly, since I'm only about 12 minutes from where you are, and it's almost dinner time. So thank you for joining the show. I appreciate you doing all the stats research and helping bring some information to the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for having me on at your desk and with a laptop you purchased.
Yeah. It's been a very long time since it's been on the show, so I hope you'll start coming on more regularly. We definitely need the help. All right. Well, again, I want to remind everyone, we had at one point we had 139 people watching. I hope if you haven't left the show, please hit the like button, subscribe to the show so you can get updates. Don't forget about the Patreon group, £3 a month, where you can engage with us on a regular basis and all the other fans of the Cheese Room and Tottenham around the world. And with that, we look forward to the show. I don't think there's going to be one Wednesday. We'll have a show on Friday to preview the Wolves game. No one here, I think, will be part of that, but somebody will. And I'm sure they'll do a fantastic job on that show. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks to panel. And remember, as we always exit, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Oh, and that, what always helps is when you know that you're the host.
Yeah,
you actually have the outro ready to roll, and you don't have one of these things weird where you say, "Come on."